We have some significant breaking news. Jonathan Lemire, it looks like another indictment, perhaps the most significant indictment, may be coming Donald Trump's way.
Yeah, we may be on the verge of that in just a couple of days. Just in the last few minutes, Joe, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, his fledgling social media site, to reveal this. I'm paraphrasing. He says he received a target letter from the Department of Justice, from Jack Smith's office, Sunday night, saying that he is indeed a target of the January 6th grand jury investigation. So a target letter, as we know, is usually a signal that indictment is on the horizon. Trump goes on to say that he's been given just 4 days to report to court. Now, we haven't confirmed that yet. The Department of Justice has not weighed in yet, but Trump himself says that this almost always means an arrest and an indictment. And then he goes on for 2+ pages on a screed against alleged bias in the system and stuff, which we will not repeat. But again, we know that he has already been charged with a crime federally for the mishandling of classified documents. We know he has already been charged with crimes in New York State for business practices. We believe that in a matter of weeks, a charge could come down in the state of Georgia for election interference. And now Trump himself is confirming that he's received a target letter for the January 6th and election interference probe. It's not just about the events of the riot at the Capitol, but all that led to it.
Well, and Jonathan, right now we're sitting at 2 indictments. We talked about the possibility of 4 indictments before. And there was always a skepticism that these indictments were going to come down because, again, you talk about Mueller, you talk about impeachment. Donald Trump was never held accountable for his actions. Here, you have the New York City indictment. You have, which some people questioned why it went first. Well, I think those questions are actually being answered by just how serious these other indictments are. You then had the documents, the Mar-a-Lago documents case that was brought in federal court in Florida, in South Florida. And there you have Donald Trump allegedly stealing nuclear secrets, stealing military secrets, stealing plans to invade Iran, refusing to give them back, waving documents around in recordings, saying, I have all of these top secret documents that I can't show you, that I can't declassify. So all of that extraordinarily important. But there's always been this feeling, I think, for many Americans, that while all of that's serious, the case that is most important for Donald Trump to be brought to justice to is, in fact, January the 6th, especially because you have so many working Americans that got involved in riots, brutalized police officers, nearly beat police officers to death, did things that they would never have done but for Donald Trump. This, according to them and their attorneys in front of federal judges. So if you're indicting all of these people, and there's so many people that have gone to jail for a conspiracy to commit sedition, and you leave out the guy at the top of that chain of events, that's not justice. That's one man getting away with a lot of what working class Americans didn't get away with. Like you said, the fact that he was contacted, given 4 days, means that he may not be far off in saying that he expects to be arrested very soon. This is, again, from what he's saying, and I think most legal experts would agree, he should expect to be arrested very soon possibly for sedition, to commit a conspiracy to commit sedition against the federal government. And as you said, other activities around January the 6th. Go into those.
Yeah, it's not just, of course, the events of that day. His speech at the Ellipse, which drove rioters to the Capitol, and he had said he'd marched there with them, even though he ended up not doing so. And we know he then returned to his private study off the Oval Office and watched along on television and cheered along on television. But it's the 6-8 weeks prior to that where he tried to interfere with the election, with his schemes cooked up in the Oval Office, with the fake electors, with John Eastman, the attorney, being the author of many of those plans, the effort to get Mike Pence to go to the Capitol on January 6th to try to throw the election to the House of Representatives, believing that he would then win. It's basically the big lie. Months worth of the big lie is part of this investigation. And we don't know, he has not been charged yet. We do not know what charges would come. But as we say, target letters usually lead to charges. And per Trump, and this is from Trump himself, it seems like it's a pretty accelerated timetable here. And we do know also, Joe and Mika, we know that the Jack Smith investigation is opaque deliberately it has been. We know who they've been talking to, and they've been slowly working up the chain to some of his top aides, some of those who were in the White House with him that day, campaign officials, the vice president himself. They have talked to them, building the case, moving towards Trump. And legal experts have always said this might be the hardest charges to bring, but if they did, they'd be the most serious.
Most serious, Mika.
Yeah, and this is, in Trump world, has got to be just, at this point, chaos. And I don't know how you run a campaign in the middle of all these legal cases, and some that are really percolating. The hearing today, of course, in the documents case, and whether or not how to handle, not just dealing with how to handle classified documents, but what the timing on that case might be. And of course, Donald Trump wants to move it till after the election. And now this, potentially having to report to court in the next 4 days on January 6th, which is significant in so many ways, to all the points that you mentioned, Joe, to the people who showed up that day, to the people who listened to Donald Trump when he said, go to the Capitol, I'll meet you there. And the testimony by people who worked so closely with him, saying that he wanted to go there as well himself. Never showed up, but a lot of people did and are serving real time right now in jail because what many have testified because of what Donald Trump told them to do. And let's keep in mind, we could go farther back. Look at the debate when he said, stand back and stand by. A lot of people feel that what they saw on January 6th was exactly what they were standing back and standing by for, Joe.
I mean, standing back and standing by, it's so fascinating that you said that. I was just thinking a couple of nights ago of all the damning tells that we had before January the 6th. Going to that last presidential debate where Donald Trump told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, this is what he was talking about. Show the clips. These clips are exactly what he was envisioning when he said stand back and stand by. And then, of course, we understand, and Jonathan Lemire can talk to us about this far better than we can because he wrote the book on January the 6th and the big lie. There was, of course, him having a furious meeting with his attorneys who said, Mr. President, there's nothing there. Donald Trump sulking off and angrily tweeting in the middle of the night to come to Washington on January the 6th. Jonathan, that it will be crazy. This guy, again, he's telling the Proud Boys in a presidential debate, stand back and stand by. I may need you. If I don't win this election, I may need you to have a violent overthrow of the federal government and to stop the counting. That's exactly what's going on here. And again, the intent was always, if I can't do this legally, I'll do this violently. If you look at his own tweets, you read your book, you lay this out so specifically. And then, Jonathan, and talk about all this, also about him running for president. We were saying in 2019 that if he lost in 2020, he would run for president again because he understood that was his only way to escape prison. And here we are.
It will be wild. Those were his words, where he summoned people to January 6th and, in this case, commit violence in his name. And you're right, this has been something from the beginning. We have laid out chapter and verse about how the thought that he was going to run for office again in an attempt to get ahead of these charges, try to avoid these charges. Their bank shot, their Hail Mary shot had always been, if Trump wins again, he can make these investigations go away, the federal ones anyway, which is why Georgia, and to a lesser extent New York, are a thorn in his side.
That's why it's so preposterous that whenever anybody associated with Donald Trump says, oh, the only reason he's being charged is because he's running for office. That's actually the complete opposite.
It's the inverse.
The only reason he's running for office, and he's still saying he's going to keep running for office, because as Jonathan Turley, his biggest apologist in the legal field, said after the documents case was charged, he said, first of all, very serious, just like Barr. He's in big trouble, just like Barr saying he's in big trouble, and that just one of those 37, I think it is, indictments If he loses on one of the 37, he's going to jail for life. Turley said it's a life sentence. And so here we are. He says, I'm still running. Of course he's still running, because if he stops running, all he has to look forward to is spending the rest of his life in jail.
Right, and that's the other takeaway from this very, very lengthy post on Truth Social, most of which is conspiracy theories and attacks on the so-called deep state. But beyond revealing that he received this target letter, he does indeed vow that he is staying in the race. I will never stop. It's been a never-ending fight, so on and so on and so on. So he is indeed planning to fight this. He is giving no indication he would abandon his hopes for the presidency, which now might be his last shot, as you say, to try to stay out of jail and to spend potentially the rest of his life in jail. He's in his mid-70s, right. Donald Trump here. And this is a case that we've been watching from the beginning. It is the most serious. It's an attack on our very democracy, the peaceful transition
you brought up
to power.
a really important point, Jonathan, before you continue, a really important point. The hardest case to prove, and at the same time, the most important case, many believe, to bring.
And one that the federal government was a little slow to pursue until the work of the January 6th committee on what happened, the House committee, which sort of revived the national conversation about it, and per reporting, really then triggered sort of the DOJ to step into overdrive on that case. And you know, certainly the classified documents, we shouldn't downplay how serious that is. Those are some of America's top secrets that he's had in an unguarded location there at his beach club. But this is we've never seen a president try to maintain power, to try to use, in this case, even violence, inspire violence, to keep his grip in the office. And here it seems like he is now potentially just days away from being charged for it.
You know, days away, Mika, from possibly being the first president ever. I mean, we've already broken so many firsts with the first president to be indicted, but the first president to ever be indicted for sedition against the United States government.